And we are here live with Uncle James in the building. He's out of New York. Y'all know y'all haven't seen me live in a minute. So everybody chime in, say hello, where you from, if you are catching this live, or if you catch the playback. I'm trying to get this thing up on my group as well. Here we go. So we live on Instagram too. All right. So there we go. Y'all know I'm rusty. I haven't been in the studio in a while, in my own studio, to say the least. Been running around for some of you guys and girls that do know. Having my own firm and starting a firm and managing portfolios and writing books. Coming out with a new book. Uncle James, you just said it, the coloring book for kids in Spanish and English. Been busy, been around. So if you are that's how you know I'm old. Definitely rusty, Yeah, we got our guys in here. B handstands, congratulations. Yeah, definitely. And then Al Williams always showing love. He's in here too. So I'm in my office. So everybody say hello. So Uncle James, how you doing today?
How are you? It's been a long time. You look great. You've become so famous. I thought you didn't want to talk to me anymore.
No, definitely not. Y'all know I just saw Uncle James not too long ago. Not too long. What was that? November. I was up in New York, so we saw each other there. Every time I go to New York, I always reach out to Uncle James here and see how he's doing and get some snippets from him to share with the audience. I don't know how you say your name. You're Tropical Voyager. Hello. Currently in Virginia, but from California. Good to see you back on, of course. Oh, yeah. Dan on Instagram, too. Mr. Corey here. So, yes, we got a nice, good conversation. We're here on live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of the good stuff. So, we got a lot of turmoil going on. We got, since February 19th, we've seen the market after Valentine's Day take a nice tumble. We've seen the S&P 500 right now down 16%, NASDAQ down 13%. We got the Dow Jones down 9%. Pretty much every industry across the 11 industries, from communications, industrial, real estate, consumer materials, technology, consumer staples, they've all taken a downturn since February 19th, And the only things that kind of stayed steady is your consumer staples and healthcare are only ones that are kind of balancing in there. So we got a lot going on, a lot of drama on the market. You're talking about federal government layoffs. You got tariffs in the building. We really don't know where to start. So the first thing we're going to start with, the first thing everybody's talking about, and I want to go back to your article. You wrote an article that stated that the Trump administration is purposely pushing the market down, right? Now, I read this article, and you was talking about how this directly relates to your interest rates.
Yeah.
So let's hear this.
Yeah.
The first, you know what? Yeah. Let's before we get into that, the hot item right now is tariffs. Let's talk about these tariffs. What's going on with the tariffs? How do you feel about the tariffs? And is this a good bargaining chip that we're trying to use?
Well, be more specific, because there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on. I mean, there was another attempt on the president's life that was kind of quiet. There was a plane intercepted over the golf course in New Jersey that he runs. That while he was there, they had fighter planes scrambled, and there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on. There's been some deportations. They deported a guy who ran the sort of pro-Hamas Colombia protests against Israel, which has created other protests. That's a real sore spot for a lot of New Yorkers, because anybody who was around during 9/11, is anything that is even tangentially related to a terrorist in any reason whatsoever is a no-go. So if you tell me you support somebody and if for any way whatsoever they're also behind them is a terrorist organization, people like me are just going to go, nope, sorry, it doesn't make any difference what you do. You're not, you have nothing to say that I want to hear whatsoever. I would say that there's definitely a big change in the Middle East. For many years, we've heard about this idea of this great reset is supposed to come. And a lot of elites and political players have been boasting about basically how this is going to be a huge communist utopia. And there's going to be a global government that's going to run our lives and decide what we're going to eat, drink, sleep, or whatever we're going to do. And I have often said that that is just totally BS. And I believe that Donald Trump is the Great Reset. It is nothing to do with socialism. It is going to lead to a more individualism, a much more libertarian lifestyle that we're going to be able to have because of AI. And AI is going to do all kinds of stuff for us, like send us our driver license renewals on time instead of waiting for motor vehicle to do it, and reminding us when we forget to pay, and reminding us when we don't pay tickets, and doing things like that. A lot of this stuff is just going to be done. We're not even going to be aware of it anymore. It's going to happen and this creates an environment where kind of big government is now obsolete. And at least that's my theory. A lot of people see it the opposite. They think AI is going to make government bigger and more powerful. I would say the bigger and more powerful you are, the more you should be scared of AI, because it's going to be the great equalizer. I've heard you before talk about companies like Uber. Well, imagine if everybody had an AI system in their car, kind of like a GPS, and I just decide, well, I got the afternoon off, I've met certain qualifications, and I have a code, a passcode. I'll plug it in and I'll be an Uber for the next 2 hours. And AI can do everything. And who needs Uber? I get a lot bigger commission. I get paid more when I ride people. And everything gets done, and the company becomes obsolete. Nobody needs the company anymore because AI does everything. It links everybody up, and passengers and drivers. It approves people. It does the whole deal.
And I think to that, it's the king is data. Having the data, who has the data to be able to connect the rider and this person, the software to that's going to be reign supreme.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's a very exciting time to be alive, and then we're going to get to the Trump thing next. Yeah.
I want to get into one thing that you say. I don't think anybody's against saving money and saving the country and stuff like that. Now, do you feel like that the way our president is going about it is the best way?
Oh yeah, I think you got to have a blitzkrieg. To steal a word from World War II, I think the only way to get this done is you got to you got to just go in there and knock the crap out of, excuse my English, the crap out of everybody. That's the only way it's going to work. There is an entrenched bureaucracy that clearly feels that your money is their money, and they are here to tell you what to do. And they are not, people talk about Musk not being elected. Well, who elected the head of the EPA? Who elected all these guys who work at the IRS? None of them got elected either. When I got audited, none of those people audited me were elected. They audited me because I voted for the wrong person at the time. So I think that's just who he is, we used to say. And I think you need to, if you look at Doge.org, like the government sort of, if you look at the thing, it's terrifying, the stuff they're finding. The amount of waste is gargantuan. It's not small, it's gargantuan.
And hear me out on this. On the I quit the government. It reminds me of a time when through my military service, right about 2008, right? You had the economy took a shock in 2008, 2009. So a lot of people were wanting to come into the federal government. Nobody wanted to leave the military. Everybody wanted to come in. Nobody wanted to leave. So you had this blockage. So everybody out here that served during that time they remember something called perform to serve, where when your contract was up, you had to submit for a new contract. And then if you, they might send you to a new job field. They might just not give you a contract and process you out. And it kind of got us through that tough patch. What do you feel about our federal government taking an approach like that, saying, hey, you know what? We're going to phase this out or slowly do it instead of just saying,
can't,
hey.
They won't let him. He already tried that the first time. They're not going to let him. They're going to fight him tooth and nail. They have like unlimited, like organizations like the EPA had unlimited power. They could come into your little hometown there, kick everybody out of their houses, declare that whole place a national park, and you guys would have to like pound sand and get lost. And it's like there's nothing, and up till pretty much right now, there's nothing you could do about it. They were that powerful, and they're not elected, and nobody votes on half the stuff they do. And so now
he's that was a wild time. He remembers the time where we had to. It was stretched out, and it was a way to kind of keep that flow going. Instead of just waking up and saying, "Hey, you know what? Everybody who's at this ranking below, get out of here."
Well, you got to remember, I come from Wallstreet, so I worked there in the 80s and 90s, and when people cry about it, we only had 15 minutes to leave our desk and get out of the building. I'm like, I was thrown out by people. They ripped my ID off my neck, and I was given my file box by a security guard and rushed out the door with the whole group. All like 17 of us were fired in less than, I don't know, I would say under 5 minutes. We were out of the building on the street, standing there looking at each other and trying to find a bar that was open early enough that we could go to the bar and like regroup.
Okay. So you said it was that. Okay. Now,
so you got pounded. And I first of all, there's a couple of things. A lot of the cream is going to float to the top. So the people who are doing good jobs or things that are necessary are going, once this thing is going to stabilize eventually, and those people are going to float back up. They're going to get resituated or resettled. Other stuff that's going on, there's just tons of stuff the government is doing that they have no business doing whatsoever. And a lot of this is just graft and it's monstrously being misreported by the media. For example, they're going to cut Social Security. They're not cutting Social Security at all. However, no more 300-year-olds are going to get Social Security checks. Now, as far as I know, we weren't a country 300 years ago, nor does anybody. And I have a lot of longevity in my family. Even in my family, no one's lived to be 300 years old. So you got that. You have 440 million people in the United States who are eligible for Social Security. Well, I have news for you. Only 330 million people live in the United States, and I guarantee not all of them are over 65. So you just have and a lot of this stuff some of this is just accounting issues and data issues, that data is not matching up right. That's why it looks either worse or better than it is. But a lot of this is, the money, like if you look at the news feed, it's just, it's hundreds of thousands, it's just insane. And on top of all that, what we should be worrying about, what we should also be which you never hear the counter argument, is we are what, 2 trillion? We are $36 trillion in debt. We are at $1 trillion budget deficit in 1 month. Guys like the guy who runs Bridgewater, what's that guy's name? He's
Ray Dalio.
He's all over saying the end of the world is, the end is near. Where that's why I bought a sailboat. If this thing goes sideways, I'm out of here. So, I'm ready to make a move. Right? I'm ready to run for it. This whole thing is like a floating bunker. It's like right. So we're not, and it gets worse, because this is why I think, and it took me a lot to admit to myself that this is true. In the next 6 months, $7 trillion worth of federal debt is going to come due, and it all has to be refinanced.
Hold on, before you get into that, James, we're going to get into that. I'm going to get into that article that I read on the Ridgewood blog. This is a great article, by the way.
Thank
But
you.
I got to ask you this question. I want you to walk me through this, right? You made very good points. You say, hey, the federal government is, we got this too much bloat. President's going in, clearing out. Doge is finding all of these inefficiencies across the market. So we want to let all these employees go. Now we let all these people go, thousands of federal employees go. What are those federal employees going to do besides end up on unemployment?
Well,
Job.
that's for short term. They're going to, a lot of them, some of them took checks, which the smart ones took the checks and ran. I like people telling people not to take a check and run, where that was financial malpractice, and those people should be prosecuted. Okay, that's a no-go. One thing I learned on Wall Street, and
for like 10, 15, 20 years. You just say, hey, here's a check and go home.
right, but but well, first of all, probably for me, I can't relate working anywhere for 20 years, so it's hard for me to relate with that, right? I'm not like although the Richmond blog I've run about 20 years now, so that's about the only thing. I don't even the only relationship I have that's over 20 years old is with my cat. So like, I don't even know anybody for 20 years. Right. So and I know you a long time, but I don't even know you for 20 years. Right.
Exactly. That's true.
But I think a lot, the qualified people who get laid off, who have skills, there's going to be huge opportunities for them if you worked in the defense industry or for the government, for the Defense Department, you don't think all those big defense contractors are going to be looking to hire a lot of those people? You don't think some of the states like Virginia already said they want to hire a bunch of people because they're short of, haven't we just been talking about all this worker shortage and what they're going to build robots now because they can't get anybody to do anything. You can't get anybody to a lot of work. You can't get people to fill in. I mean, I know in New York, even like tour guides, there's like a tour guide shortage. Like it's like there's a lot of stuff out there now. The problem is, like always, is that some of the skills you have to do well in Washington may not be transferable into the private sector. But I would bet a lot of these people have skills to work for a lot of companies, and they're going to be well trained. They're going to be good. A lot of them are going to be good employees. They're just doing something we don't need to be done anymore, or we never needed to be done. That's probably the real truth.
Now, do you think that there's enough demand to meet the supply? Like we're laying off thousands.
There's a misplace. First of all, you're going to have the layoffs are going to really hit the Washington D.C. area really hard, and probably Northern Virginia like hard, and they already are hard. So, but a lot of those people look at yourself. You were in the Navy, right? And you put in a nice career. You drove a submarine or whatever. You were in the Navy in Colorado. So I'm still trying to get this in my head because I'm trying to figure out what water. There's no water in Colorado. So, but I don't want to ask any questions because I don't want to get myself in trouble. So anyway, so you're there, right? And you put in and what did you do? You got some education. You got interested in finance. Now look how now. Of course, it hasn't been easy, and there's a lot of challenges. But look at you used your skills. You created that son. You with Wesley. You created a thing. Like maybe it's not making you rich, but it's a cool thing. And I would bet eventually it's going to pay off really big. No matter what you do, even if it's totally a charity, it's going to pay off really big. You became a financial advisor, right? That takes a while to get going no matter what you do, unless like you're a guy I used to work with.
James, we got a comment. What's going on, Joanne? She said 100% private jobs generate wealth. Government jobs do not.
Yes.
So
you see, this is why I like coming on your show, because your audience is smart and they're enthusiastic. And even if they don't agree, they want to listen. They want to learn. They're here, like they want to hear what people have to say, which is phenomenal. It's totally phenomenal. And but I mean, I agree. I'm just trying to be nice because I'm one of those guys. I'm like, burn the whole place. Like my attitude is the last person who had as much fun as Trump is having in Washington is the British admiral who burned it to the ground in the War of 1812. And that's like, wow. People in Washington or government employees may be shocked to hear people think this. I don't want to tell you how many people I know who are like, burn that place to the ground and let's just start all over again. They think Washington is the enemy. They don't think China is the enemy. They don't think crime is the enemy. They don't think illegal immigrants are the enemy. They think Washington is the enemy. And that's how Trump got elected, really. And I'm not saying that's true, but I'm saying that's a perception of a large swatch of the American public. It may not be the majority, but it's a very large minority. Maybe 40% of the voters think that. Maybe it's 50%. It might even be that high, that just think it's time to go. They're not our friends.
Let me ask you this question. Now that we've seen all this turmoil go on, right? President Trump came in day one. He got rid of remote work. He got rid of, all the probationary workers. We didn't even get into the geopolitical, world.
JP Morgan's doing the same thing. So it's,
we're all over the place. We got a government shutdown going on. We got this going on. We're seeing the market just sell off since February 19th, essentially. You're seeing 401ks get plummeted. You're seeing Tesla stock lose 50%. Seems like and then people are anticipating worse. They're like, hey, we haven't even seen unemployment go up. We haven't even seen this radiate into real estate. We haven't seen this radiate into retail. So people are anticipating. Now, in a current market like this, what would you do in a current market like this?
Oh, this is a monster buying opportunity. This is going to be the buying opportunity for probably anybody under 50 of their lifetime. They are never going to have a chance like this again. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying it's going to turn around really fast. I'm just saying this is because these companies are making money like hand over fist. And we are in a technological revolution, the likes of which even people like me who lived through the dot-com era, this is going to make the dot-com era look like nothing. This is huge. And not only do you have AI, you have robotics, you have space. Within, I believe that within 4 or 5 years, we're going to have somebody on Mars. And so this is huge.
It's just a question. Now, you're speaking of the person that's coming into the market, people who are already in the market. They're like, hey, I got this portfolio. I had this portfolio. It's done good last year. Done good. Now it's down. I don't have a whole lot of cash. What do you do in that type of situation?
Well, you got to, if you have quality stocks, you ride it because they're going to like, for example, I have a stock, Palantir Technology. I have a lot of it. I bought it a long time ago, and I actually got recommended by the same guy who told me to buy Qualcomm in 1993. So I listened to him, and then I checked out the company, and I was like, holy crap, this thing is it. So, it's down 50% from its high. It's up it's up huge. It's so, I'm not happy this moment. I'm not ready to buy. I was looking at buying another boat. I was like, I can get a bigger boat now. I was like in that movie Jaws. I'm like, we need a bigger boat. That's the answer to this. We're going to get a bigger boat. Right. But so maybe that's canceled momentarily, but it's still up. I mean, it's even up huge from the beginning of the year, from before Trump was president. It's still up huge, even though it's down in half. That's how much it was up in a 4-week period. It was insane. And their numbers are huge. Not only that, something that of course is not being reported at all. Well, first of all, a lot of the savings to the taxpayer are not being reported. The dealing with this enormous debt that we have to deal with is not really being talked about at all by the mainstream media. But more importantly, did you notice the last couple of days, the inflation numbers? They were kind of flat. And we've all heard that all these tariffs are going to make everything really expensive. Listen, I'm as mad as all of you that tequila is going to be more expensive. And now I heard he's going to put a 200% tax on French champagne. I mean, this is insane, right? That's it, right? But at the end of the day, what you got to do to understand the chaos, the way it appears to be chaotic, which it isn't. Trump wrote a book in the 80s. It's called Art of the Deal. And if you read that book very carefully, everything he's doing now is in that book. All the games they're playing, all the we're on, we're off, we're this, we're that, we're yes, we're no, we're going to do it, we're not going to do it. That's all in the book.
Now,
And
bring us back. The order of the deal, using the tariffs as a bargaining chip.
yes, oh, totally.
How do you think it's going to play out with people, the tariff war?
Well, according to the regular mainstream media, Canada is no longer going to send Canadian geese here, and our whole economy is going to collapse because we're not going to have Canadian. I think they're going to. I'm worried we're not going to get hockey pucks or something. I'm trying to figure out like what the. Yeah, there's some raw materials. Okay, I get it, and trust me, I love Canadians. I believe it or not, since I've been a sailor, I've met a lot of Canadians sailing, and they're just nice people. But I don't really this idea that like little tiny economies like Canada are going to crush the United States is the most absurd, silly thing I've ever heard in my life. It's dumb. It's more financial malpractice by the mainstream media. Eventually, we're going to come to terms. And if you notice, which of course isn't reported at all, as soon as Trump started this, the Prime Minister of India ran to Washington immediately and made a huge trade deal with the United States. Why? Because he read Art of the Deal and he knew it was coming. They're smart. They know what's going on. So did South Korea, by the way. You notice you haven't heard anything about South Korea. And so did South Korea. Now, the Europeans have a lot of issues, and I think the tariffs with them go deeper. The real target of tariffs in Europe is the overregulation of the tech companies. And I think Trump feels they are stepping on the wrong toes. And they're also regulating against free speech with both Musk, and a lot of other Republicans and people like myself say, if you're against free speech, I'm against you. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's a line in the sand on that. And for all the people who are against free speech, you need to find another place to live because you're not going to live here. Or you need either to embrace that because that's how the country was built, or you need to find some, move to Cuba or whatever. I don't know even where you can go, but it's like pack up.
How do you think it's going to end? How do you think it's going to end?
I think a lot of I think they're going to make deals. I don't think they're going to cave or somebody's going to give in. I think with Europe it's going to be a little tense. I think Canada, Mexico, even the Chinese are, they may be a communist dictatorship, but at the end of the day, culturally, it's business first. So they're eventually gonna put business first. I think a lot of other countries sort of are fighting Trump at the beginning because they're reading the U.S. media, so they're not taking this serious. They think this is all a big joke and it's nobody's going to listen to him. You need to toe the line. Because you know what it is too, another thing, and I hear this from my friends all the time, and they're like my age. They're like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of everybody coming here, freeloading like all crazy, getting everything handed to them. Everybody's got to change everything because everybody who comes here, and yet then they get to criticize everything as well. And it's like, no. I have a lot of friends who are like you, who served in the military and it did a lot of crazy stuff, and they did not go to like almost get killed over. They did not fight for a country that was going to put up with that crap. And so Trump is tapping into a lot of pent up. I would say it's not just Biden. It's like this has been building for 20, 25, maybe 30 years already. And there's a lot of people out there who are really angry because, and it's not like, again, the media misreporting. Media says people are against immigration. No, they're not. They're against illegal immigration, which is totally different than immigration. And it's a totally different thing. Go ahead.
All right. Now, let me ask you this question.
Go ahead.
Because now, the market is the leading economic indicator, meaning that it's not happening. It's not reacting today off of what is happening today. It's going off of what is expected to happen over the next couple of months. People are like, hey, unemployment is going to go up. Real estate is probably going to start to feel the effects because people are not going to be buying homes. People are losing jobs. Money is leaving the economy, essentially, right? Now, do you think that we are overreacting, or do you think we're reacting? And also, I want to add
massively
indicators that you haven't talked about this year: the January barometer, right? We started off at the beginning of January. Was at the S&P 500 was at 584. It was up,
Right.
So the January barometer. So are we overreacting? And do you think that we're going to end the year in green like we did in 2020?
Oh yeah. Well, what I harken back, if I'm old enough, I remember Paul Volcker, and when he came in as
Old
head of the
school,
Federal
head
Reserve,
chair, old
yes,
school, way before
he
my time.
yeah, way before your time. He was when he was like the king when he came in, and it was the end. The Carter administration was like disintegrating. We all knew, unless you were in the media, of course, everybody knew Reagan was going to win by a landslide. They just didn't realize every single person in the United States was going to vote for Reagan, because that's what happened, basically. Um, and Reagan came in with a blowout a little before Reagan got in there, or probably around the time Reagan got in. It was around 1980. I might have my dates mixed up. Volcker went on TV and, smoking this big, huge cigar, made this speech. And basically the speech said, you need to put your seatbelts on, because in 5 minutes, I'm shutting down all the printing presses. This thing is going to be like a freight train hitting a brick wall. So you better hang on, because it's going to be really rough. And it was insane. It was like brutal. It way worse than this, because it wasn't just concentrated in Washington. It was everywhere. And then on top of that, you had all these really poorly run companies. Kind of like now, you have a lot of great names, but the companies are run really poorly because of politics and a bunch of other stuff. And that sprung in that leverage buyout movement, kind of tailed in after that. And and then, of course, Volcker wrung that huge inflation wave out of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
The stock market took off in 82. It was probably around 1,000, the Dow Jones. I'm old school. I learned Dow theory first, so I still look at the Dow. So the Dow took off, and by 87, before it crashed, it had almost tripled in 5 years. Imagine if the stock market tripled from where it is now. See, people like me, that's a bull market. Not going up 10% a year. That's not a bull market. A bull market is like 82 to 87. That's a bull market. That's a real bull market.
But what happened in 87?
Right, it crashed. However, the Dow set a new high in less than 6 months. Mind you, it took NASDAQ like over a year before it even worked. But the Dow came flying right back. I mean, it was about 3 months of, I would say close to 3 months of total chaos. And we were on Wall Street. We all got laid off. Everybody got laid off. I would show up at our trading floor, and people were just disappearing wholesale. And I suddenly, I'm standing there with my assistant, and I'm thinking to myself, we're the only two people left on the floor here, so we're going to get all the accounts. But it didn't quite work out like that. But that's what we thought at the time. We thought we would just get everything.
In a situation like you said, what happened with Paul Volcker, this is when he just famously jacked up interest rates.
Yes, huge.
Jacked up, I don't know, 20%.
Yeah, 20, 22, 20. I think they were like 27% on one. It was that high. It was like a third world country. It was totally insane. But inflation was like 20%. You got to remember, if you go back to 2020, a dollar in 2020 now it's worth 76 cents. Like, we have taken a huge hit in the last since like just before, since the COVID thing.
Now, why are you saying this? I want to bring up a little history of this.
Okay.
1930, we had the Great Depression. 1940, we had World War II. The 70s and 80s, we had hyperinflation, which led to Paul Volcker jacking up the interest rates, right? And then in the 80s, we had a real estate and banking collapse, right?
But at the end of the 80s, not at the beginning. And the real estate didn't fall until 89. I think 89 was the high. It was 2 years after the stock market crashed.
And then we had 87, like you said, before the market crash, you had 87, you had Black Monday, right? Then in 2000, you had the tech bubble.
Well, you forgot, you missed a couple. You missed one in the 90s. I believe it was the early 90s. That was a little later. You had the Russia defaulted on its sovereign debt. You had the sovereign debt. Most people call it the long-term capital crisis, because that was the biggest hedge fund, and that went under. And that went under during that period. And that was run by John Merriweather, who was like the richest guy on Wall Street for like 25 years. Like, he was huge. And he only was not the richest guy when Milken was around. And then when Milken went to jail, he got the crown back, and nobody knocked it off his head. He was originally from Salomon Brothers. He was like a huge bond guy. And he was super famous. And I think he went bankrupt with that whole thing. They went totally under. And that was a total catastrophe. So that happened in like the early part of the 90s. And you got to remember when Bush was president, you had kind of like the Bush, like the post 80s hangover of consumer spending. Everybody had a lot of credit card debt. So we had like the very early 90s, you had like nobody was spending any money for a while. But then, of course, in 94, what else happened? We all got one of these.
Cell phone. Okay.
And we also got on the internet. All us regular people. Joe Sixpack got on the internet. Joe Sixpack got one of these, not just the rich guys. And
now, and I brought that up because you've seen a lot. You've seen more than I have. You saw 87. You saw .com 08. You was in the industry. You was full force, right?
Yep.
I've only had the opportunity been in the industry seeing 2020, right? So in these type of situations, do you go to cash? Do you sell your security? Go to
Some
cash?
people do. The problem is the timing part. The same with going short. Unless you really know what you're doing.
Betting against the market. Do you go short?
Yeah.
Do you go to cash?
Some people do. You can do it, and I've seen people make a lot of money doing it. It's never been my thing because the problem with going short is if it goes against you, you can lose more money than you bet. So you can really get your clock cleaned. But it also is a very dangerous game because, like in 82, when this thing turns around, or after 87 crash, when it restabilized and turned around, it went up and up and up and up and up. Like it just, there was no stopping it. And you saw, like, you were around you got some of the 90s, like the .com era. We went up from like 93 all the way to like 2000, basically straight up. Yeah, we had some bumps on the way, but the market just went insane because of this big technology revolution.
When you was in these bull markets, did it feel like, like from the bull market that I witnessed was from 2009 to 2020, right?
Yeah,
that's that decade. But it didn't feel like it. Did it feel different?
It wasn't, no, because it was like it went up. It was like an inflationary rise in stock values, and it didn't really. It just reflected it was an okay market, and it was kind of an index market. But when you're talking like if it goes from 1,000 to 3,000 in 5 years. So what did the Dow close today? Imagine it tripling from the price it is now in 5 years. Where would that get you?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be like 90,000. It would be like insane, right? It would be right. That's like when you get into those moves, you just, first of all, everybody thinks they're a genius, which is a problem, right? That's
because everybody's like, look, I picked this.
The egos get that people's heads get so fat they can't button their collars anymore.
Here's another one. I noticed in the last 4 or 5 years, people tell me how they're a real estate genius, and I'm like, well, you could have bought anything, and if you bought anything in this past few years in real estate, whether it's a single family home, a duplex, a piece of land, you made pretty well. And I see a lot of people like, oh yeah, I'm like, well, it's been kind of like a little bullish market since we had those lower interest rates, post 9/11 and not 9/11, but post pandemic and during the pandemic. Right. So I always tell people, everybody's a genius in a bull market, but the bad markets.
Don't confuse brains with a bull market. Always remember that.
Oh, don't confuse brains with a bull
market. Right. And I also say, like, when you're in a bull market, what do? You buy stocks because that's what you do in a bull market, or you buy real estate, right? When you're not in a bull market, you do other things. you buy a sailboat. You go.
Now put that on the reverse side. We know what to do in a bull market. What do you do in a bear market?
Well, I'm it's hard for me because when it comes to investing and technology and stuff, I'm super bullish. Period. It's just my general view of the world. I have those rose-colored glasses on all the time, so I see the upside. I would say one of the best ways is people have 401ks, things like that. Just keep pumping away. It's money that you're paying, pre-tax, so a lot of it's money the government would get in taxes anyway, so you're not like giving up that much. Just keep those things going because you're going to be real 5 years from now. You're going to be good thing I was buying then because it was really cheap compared to now. It's like you're just going to do well. And if this whole thing makes you nervous, you know what you do? Turn the TV off and get a hobby or do something else and just stay away. Just read, find some rational people. For example, you talk about overreacting. Well, Muchin was on TV yesterday, and he said everybody's way overreacting. There's no, they know what they're doing because these guys know what's going on. And of all people, Art Laffer was all over the place. And I met Art Laffer in person. The guy is amazing. And he's an old guy, and he's got more energy than I do. He's really like he's a smart guy. He was one of the Reagan guys. He's one of the reasons the market went up so much when Reagan. And he was all in with Trump. He was all in. He's like this guy knows what he's doing. Just don't go crazy. It's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. He was like because he's also somebody who went through that whole Volcker thing. So that Volcker thing, like we were all just like jumping out of planes without parachutes. Like it was bad. It was really bad. It was a total train wreck.
let's switch it. You spoke about Doge. Headed by Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla. Tesla seeing a 50% drop in the stock price since Elon Musk taking over. You're seeing all the backlash he's getting. So some people looking at is Tesla stock a buying opportunity?
Well, he's got a couple of issues. You got to look at the issues. First, generally people who were, I would say, more progressive thought electric cars were the answer, the solution to all our problems, right? Because they're very invested in that sort of this global, whatever you want to call it, climate change or whatever. I don't know what they're calling it. I can still remember when they called it global cooling. Then it got to be global warming. Then it was climate change. It seems to shift. And the only thing I do know is we're going to die tomorrow. We're going to be all dead tomorrow. And needless to say, 30 years later, we're still alive or 40 years or 50 years later. So so I think a lot of sort of progressive political thinkers were very much jumping on Musk and buying Teslas, and he was the first guy and revolutionary and everything. And now when he jumped in with Trump, I think the problem is his customer base is probably not generally made up of a lot of Trump supporters. So that's an issue. So that's one problem. Another problem is Trump is clearly, he got rid of the mandate already. He already struck down the electric car mandate. So there's that issue.
Why would you do that? And your buddy?
Well, it's funny because they were talking about this on TV. I think yesterday, the day before, Trump bought a Tesla for the White House staff to drive around.
Yes.
And he doesn't drive himself, but he said he bought it so everybody can drive it. And he wanted to show that he supported Musk and he's doing a great job and he's really helpful and more people should step up like he does and all this stuff. And I thought it was cool. And he even said, he goes, I'm the guy who got rid of the mandate. And, and he said that Musk did not call him or say anything to him the whole time, has never told him once, don't get rid of the mandate or don't do anything. He's never said anything to him. And I think that's true. And I also think that Musk, the cars are a way for Musk. It was like a way to get in. I think at the end of the day, the robots are going to be a much bigger business. So is space and a bunch of, now I know like he just had a rocket blow up, but that's part of the, I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the videos. They actually catch the stage when it comes back down to it's insane. Like you can't believe, like you look at it, you're like, wow, that really worked. It's like, you're like, there's no way that's going to work. And it worked. Like the ejected stage comes down and the thing like catches it, like clamps on it and catches it. It's totally crazy. So I think that Tesla, the power of that investment is all the technology that company, the manufacturing technology. I'll give you a perfect example of what Musk did. Musk made a deal with NVIDIA and they built a huge supercomputer in Texas, like a huge supercomputer data center. And I believe they built the thing in like 13 days where nobody's ever done it in less than like 2 years. And they put it together really fast. And Musk has developed all kinds of manufacturing techniques with Tesla that could be applied to a lot of other stuff. You have all this robot stuff. You might have this, what what is it? The cars drive themselves. I forget what they call it. Like
Automated-
Waymo. Yeah,
automated-
the self-driving,
self-driving.
all that stuff. I'm not so sure that technology really works. That I'm a little doubtful, because stuff I've seen doesn't make me be that confident in it, at least yet. But I maybe there's been an update, but I'm not sure I'm buying all that. Although I think there might be a place for it. Again, there might be a place for it. But so for people who are getting beaten down, that might be an opportunity to buy that stock, because of even if the car thing doesn't end up being that big of a deal, there's a lot of other things in there that make that stock very appealing. And there's other assets that Musk has, like, Starlink. Like, I mean, we're on Starlink right now. That's what I'm using on the boat, and it's phenomenal. And it's expensive, but it's phenomenal. And
do you think that was a bad move for Elon to go to Washington?
No, you know what he said? I saw him on an interview. I forget who it was. One of the CNBC guys who's who's very leftist. He's like a lefty, super lefty. I don't know what he's doing on a business network, but he must have relatives that are producers or something, because he doesn't really belong on a business network. Other things, maybe he should be on, maybe like MSNBC or CNN or something, but not on CNBC. But nonetheless, he's on CNBC. And Musk interviewed, and Musk said he's kind of tired of all these people putting on a show that they're doing the right thing when they're not really doing the right thing at all. And it's time to do the right thing. And Musk is also is very worried about the debt. Like, he thinks we're going to die. That's another reason he wants to go to Mars, because he thinks this whole thing is coming to an end here.
Go to Mars.
Yeah, well, I like one way. I've signed. There's a list. You can sign people up. I didn't put your name yet, but there's a neighbor I'm trying to get rid of here. I'm like, put them on the list. I'm like, yes. Like, I got a few ex-girlfriends, and my ex-wife, I put her on the list. Don't say anything, right? So I put her on the list. So we're trying to, it might be a good way to get rid of some people. And sorry, but so I would say it's going to be very volatile. You really got to get a thick skin. So what happens in this kind of market is a lot of those people, and you're an investment advisor now, you're probably hearing this. Oh, I don't mind risk. I don't mind what they mean is they don't mind when the stock goes way up really fast. But when it goes down, all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that could happen. Isn't the president going to do something about this? I'm like, yeah, he's gonna open his book, and he's gonna write one of those executive orders saying the market can't go down anymore today. That's it. I don't think that's gonna work, but you just got to be ready for that bounce. And if you just stay the course and stick with your 401ks and stuff like that, and if you're stuck in,
I got to ask you this: you got three options,
right?
Are you going to cash? Are you holding out, or you shorting? Or
no, I feel like I missed the boat on the shorting. I probably should have jumped on it sooner. So I think you missed the easy money on the short, like the low hanging fruit. No, and I wouldn't go to cash. I think I would have had. For me, it's a lot of cash prior to the election. I was more worried about the election before the election happened, that was going to be a big problem. Then I was a little more concerned. I wanted to see what happened, because I figured more of the same was going to be a disaster. And if we get a new guy, which was going to be Trump, being a New Yorker, which you have to understand the mentality of a real New Yorker like Trump. And I can tell you point blank that anybody who effed with him when he wasn't president is going to they better be in hiding, because he is not. New Yorkers don't. There's no such thing as letting things go. They never. If you go into New York City, Robert Fulton's family is still fighting with Alexander Hamilton over who's the most important New Yorker. They've both been dead over like 200 years, yet they're still fighting about it. That's the way New Yorkers think. So Trump has that going I think he sees the fear. This debt thing is a huge disaster that of course the mainstream media is totally ignoring, as well as all the overlap in Washington, over regulation, multiple agencies doing the same thing, all kinds of stuff. And the only way to really, they just got to hack this thing down and then regrow it from the beginning. We're past the point we can do any of those other things you talked about, like layoff. If you get into cash, it's going to be really hard to jump back in because this thing is going to turn and go up really fast, and you're probably going to be like, like, hey, that stock was $7 2 days ago, now it's 50, and now it's 75, and now it's 140, and wow, I was looking at it when it was $7, and like, that's the kind of thing I would be more worried about missing out on the upside.
So John Kent said, I'm honored to have worked with you in the Navy. This is great content. People can create wealth with SpaceX. Goes public. $1,000 in stocks for SpaceX in 20 years will make you bank. John, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Definitely honored to serve with some. I always love to see my old comrades.
Awesome. That's beautiful.
So what do you got to say to that? We got to say to John.
I would say anything. I'm a big fan of space. So I think it is now the time. It was too early for a long time. I think the commercialization of space is another major thing that's going on, and it's coming like a lot faster than we all think. I mean, Musk said on Rogan, he said like what, 2028 we're gonna have a guy on Mars. We're like 2028. I'm like, it's 2025. You mean 3 years you're sending somebody to Mars? It's like wow. like I gotta pack up a little. I gotta be ready just in case I get the call. Okay. I think
this is how I look at it, right? Something that's popular in the market. I have a client of mine that says, "Hey, I'm extremely interested in Tesla. I see this getting obliterated. It's unpopular. I think it's time to buy it more than anything else." I said, okay. So I looked into it, and then I discovered a leveraged bullish ETF on Tesla, right? So it's on the bullish side. It's like a 3 times bull of whatever Tesla does. So I looked at it, and realized that it hit $5 2 days ago, which is the lowest it's ever been. $5 on this bullish TSLL. For anybody that's out there, this is a free thing, TSLL, and the lowest it's ever been is $5, right? Yesterday, so that's when it caught my eye. I'm like, the lowest it's ever been. So I tell my client, hey, well, if you're interested in Tesla and you're sold out on Tesla, instead of it's only like 3 ways or 4 ways you can take care of it. Tesla is inside of the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. That's a more conservative way. Another thing is you could do calls on Tesla, but if you do calls, you're gonna have an expiration date. You could do a leverage. You could just get Tesla itself.
Yeah.
But it's risky because you just got Tesla. Or you can get this leverage bullish ETF, TSLL, which is at its all-time low. Mm-hmm. It hit its peak in December at $34.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, if that's what you believe in, just set it there, see what it does in the next.
Right. Well, it's going to be volatile no matter what happens. What we used to do a lot is with stocks like Qualcomm, because we didn't want to miss them jumping farther up. So we would write covered calls against the stock as it peaked, or try to catch the peak. And then we'd buy them back if the stock sold off. And because it was so volatile, if you waited a couple of days, you were bound to have one day where the stock was down like 50% in one day. And that's when you buy them all back. And so I called it like a covered short. So I wasn't writing covered calls to collect the sort of the dividend or make income. I was writing them instead of doing a naked, like a short sale. You sell the calls, the stock drops, the call price goes down, and you buy them back at a much lower price. So you make like the difference between the two. Hopefully the stock bounces right back up again, and then you sell the calls again. And that kept us, that way I stayed in the stock so I didn't lose it, because it usually goes down a lot faster than it goes up. But I just think of that 82 thing, and it was like, man, we woke up one morning and suddenly the world was totally different. One day you were in the 70s, the next day you were still in the 70s, right? The next day you were in the 80s. Everything was different. The music was different. All the leadership in the world was different. The economy was different. Everything was different overnight. And I think we're going to get that. That's coming. This is a long overdue house cleaning in Washington that needs to be done. And believe me, I feel bad for anybody losing their job. And I know you're a lot of people there are just innocent victims. You can't help when your boss is an idiot or you're doing stupid stuff. That's not you didn't pick it. They're just telling you what to do and you're doing it. But this is a lot in the 80s. That's what that whole leverage buyout thing was. Carl Icahn was on TV and said, that we have all these great companies, but they're run by idiots. And the only way we're going to get this economy going is we need to take the companies over and fire all the management. It's not the workers. It's not the company. It's not what they make. It's how the companies run. That's the problem. And you're getting a lot of that. You're getting some of that in Washington right now. You're getting. And I just think at the end of the day, most people, we weather this. People are going to say, hey, wait a minute. Wouldn't you rather have more money go to scholarships for underprivileged kids to go to college or trade school or something like that than have the money spent on some 300-year-old getting a Social Security check? And when there's nobody's 300 years old, so that can't be real. There's something fishy about that right away. This is all. And cutting staff and Social Security is not going to impact Social Security payments at all. It's a separate trust fund. It has almost nothing to do with the government debt. It's a whole separate thing. That's a lot of the media always throws that stuff out there, and that's just not going to happen. That's not in the realm of possibilities.
Great commentary there on that. But I got another hard-hitting question for you.
Okay.
Right? We talked about Tesla.
Okay.
Now ask yourself this question. We both agreed that it's going to be turbulent times.
Yes.
Right?
Very.
We said we got unemployment, we got policies, we got Ukraine, Europe, tariffs.
They're remaking the whole world. It is the Great Reset.
Breaking news every 2 hours. What do you think about someone going out and says, hey, we got a volatile market? Why don't I invest into the VIX? VIX is the volatility index. So, as volatility increases in the market,
it could be.
That's what we've been saying. NASDAQ has been doing 1% up, 2% down in the same day. 1% up, 2% down, 3% up. Portfolios are just jumping. What do you think about somebody saying, hey, what if I just invest in volatility?
I think some of these things are cool. The thing you got to be careful is don't outsmart yourself. Keep it simple. If you buy a complicated stock like Tesla, keep your strategy really simple. If you buy simple stocks, or easy to understand stocks, you can have a more complicated strategy. But I think a lot of people just kind of outsmart themselves. I think a lot of stuff is the simple thing. It's not looking for the next Qualcomm or the next Tesla or the next Palantir technology or whatever the next big thing is going to be. It's that putting money in over long periods of time and just staying online and just staying with it. You may want to, if you're stuck in some stocks that are down, you may want to say, you know what, maybe I should lick my wounds and reorient my portfolio and just change it a little bit and tweak it a little bit. If you have no extra cash, if you're somebody who's can put money in, even if it's a small amount of money, just keep putting it in. I would kind of don't get too complicated. Don't overthink this thing, because this is a very temporary situation. It may be 6 months, and maybe even be 2 years, but this is a very temporary situation. And when it changes, everything is going to be totally different.
That's this question. Glad you said that. Now, I think, Charlie Munger made this word very famous, and we're seeing it now in the market. We're talking about all 11 indexes, all 11 sectors of the market. Yep. Dow Jones down, S&P 500 down, all major sectors of the market is down ever since February 19th.
Right.
So we're seeing there's nowhere to hide, even crypto, right? everybody is getting slaughtered. Now, Charlie Munger made this word very famous, is the worsification, where he said, you think you got all this diversified portfolio with 30 different positions, and the market's all kind of moving. We all kind of singing the same hymn.
Yep.
In a way, when we all go down, we all go down, we all go up, we all go up.
Yep.
So when you said keep it simple, how do you feel about diversification just kind of being a theory now?
Oh, I think it's an overused BS theory, and I think it's called the Analyst Full Employment Act. If you're diversified into all kinds of things, it gives a lot of analysts jobs to do, and they get to follow all kinds of weird sectors, and they'll make new stuff up. So they'll make things up that you'll have to cover. I think most small portfolios are way over diversified. And I also think the other problem is a lot of stuff that you think is diversified is not. Like those big mutual funds that you're buying, all those companies buy the same 100 stocks because they can't buy anything else because they have too much money. So all those big mutual funds all buy the same 10, 20, 30 stocks, and that's it. And so you're not really that diversified anyway, or as much as you think. And then a lot of stuff is like you get a market like this where everything just goes down. Well, the federal government is trying to hammer this thing to get a better yield. You force the Fed to lower rates, get a better yield. So when they refinance all this debt, they pay less money, which would, in the long run, will be very lucrative, would be smart. And we're kind of trapped in that. If you're talking about Charlie Munger and Berkshire, didn't they were building cash the whole end of last year, quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So they must have saw this coming. They were thinking, I knew the debt thing was bad, but we have talked about it so long, I've gotten numb to it. But recently,
the thing is with Berkshire that I would like people to pay attention to as well is people like, oh, they're piling the cash. And the reason is look at the T-bills. T-bills was paying 4 or 5%. So if you got billions of dollars, I can get 4 or 5% on billions and trillions of dollars that are coming to me. I'm making
with no risk.
I have no risk at 4 or 5% versus getting into the market at all-time high. So they can afford to do that because they're more in the they're at a different level in life, right?
Yes.
When you're at the accumulation point in life, and yes, the market is an all-time highs. What I'm going to do? I can't afford to wait 5 years into the bottom fall out. I have to get in and take the risk.
Yep.
Versus them who's 94 in their 90s and make billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they can sit out and say, you know what? I can take $50 billion and get a risk-free 5% and wait till the market falls again. We're hitting all-time high at the all-time high. If I'm sitting on billions of dollars, or if I had a client who's got billions of dollars, I would say, hey, you can just go get 5% and make hundreds of millions of dollars risk-free versus going to the market. So people are looking at, oh, Warren Buffett, he spent 5 years he can afford to do that, right?
Right.
He can pass on these years because I'm moving billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to make hundreds of millions. So that's what people, I also look at because I've gone to his meeting and got to listen to him many times, and he says it. He's like, hey, the government is pretty much giving away a free 5%. Why wouldn't I go get T-bills and make 5% on billions and make millions while the market's hitting all-time highs?
Well, that's now you bring up an interesting point because from a personal financial standpoint, most people are not in Buffett's league. However, there is a way for a lot of people, if you're worried about the stock market, pay off your credit cards. Because if you pay off your personal debt, that's guaranteed. That's a guaranteed return with no risk at all. Much bigger than 5%. Most people's credit cards are like in the 20s, the interest rate, and use this like weak market if it scares you to pay off all your debt and or try to pay down your debt. So that way, as things come around and the economy picks up again, you're in a much better position to take advantage of it.
Oh yeah. So, and I'm glad you said that because I've had so many people send me articles. They tell me, oh, Buffett sitting on so much cash. I've gone to annual meetings of Berkshire, listened to the people. He has so much cash. But if you really listen to beneath the highlights, it's like, dude, the man got like $1 trillion some dollars on the AUM, and he has, and they're going to give you 5. Do you know what 5% of $1 trillion is?
It's a lot of bananas.
It's risk free.
Right, risk free. That's yes.
If I'm going in risk free and I'm going to get 5% on $1 trillion,
right?
If my math serves me correctly, that's about, I don't know, 5 billion. I don't know. Excuse me if I said it wrong. 5 billion a year just to sit in.
Well, this is what also a lot of your listeners have to understand is that it's like the law of large numbers. If you have $1 million and it goes down 10%, you just lost $100,000. If you have $100 and it goes down 10%, you lost $10. That's not even a cup of coffee in Starbucks, right? That's nothing. So, but it's the same percentage loss. So when you start getting into that big money, you look, if it's down like 3 or 4%, that's a lot of money all of a sudden. You're like, ooh, that's not good. That hurts. So
and the thing is, he can walk in and say, well, you know what? I can make $5 billion a year until the market crash. That don't sound like a bad idea, So, but you have regular people who are trying to accumulate, who got $100,000, $20,000. They're trying to follow Buffett, and he's in a different league. He can go get 4 or 5%. He can go get 4%.
It's like, yes, it's like, think of there's Newtonian physics, and then there's like Einstein. I don't know whether it's called quantum physics or whatever it's called. So for regular life, Newtonian physics applies to everything we do in our regular life for the most part. But when you start like sending rocket ships to Mars and doing all this other stuff, you need to look at physics in a whole different way, in a much bigger package, a much larger view. And I think like a lot of times when people see people like Buffett or a lot of these really big time investors doing stuff, because of the money they have and the money they're managing and the money they're dealing with, the rules that they're working at are different than the rules that like regular people are working at. And I would say, like I said, I'm going to repeat it again. If you're really scared about the market, start paying off your debt. That's like a guaranteed return, and that's no risk. And that's one thing. And I would just keep, if you got those 401ks, don't you dare stop them. And aside from that, I look at it as government. It's all money I'd pay in taxes anyway. So it's not, if I put 7% or to 15%, whatever the max is to a 401k, right? It's like, and I'm working in New York. My take home paycheck goes down maybe 3%, but I'm putting 15% in a savings. So that money is all just money the state and the federal government, everybody else would get in taxes anyway. So it's like a tax-free savings basically, and that's the way I look at it. And then if you're lucky and your employer matches it all, you're really, and if you're buying now, things are down, so you're buying more shares. So when the things turn around, you have more leverage on the way up, because you can have Tesla and have one share, and that stock goes up $50 a share, you made $50. But if you had 100 shares and the stock goes up that same $50 a share, makes a much bigger difference. And the reason I mention that is that I look at stocks usually like I have Plantier like $7.53 or something like that. Why? Because I won't buy a stock for $200. I don't buy stuff like that because I want that big leverage. I want to buy that stock for $7 today, and maybe in 5 years sell it for $100 or $200 or $300, $400, or whatever it's going to be, some crazy big number. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those big juice moves like that. I'm not looking. My investing is really different because it's kind of strategic, and I'm just looking for really big leverage on the upside. And I'm not in and out fast. I have stocks I bought in the 90s. I still own them. And I
got a question for you. You made a good point. So you're saying, in my experience, I have never really experienced a bull market, a true bull market.
Yeah, you haven't lived until you went through the 80s. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was like everything. Okay, football was better in the 70s. What was good about the 70s? The only thing really good about the 70s that you missed out on is football was phenomenal in the 70s. These guys, they like killed each other. It was psycho. People died at football games. Fans died at football games. It was totally crazy. It was like it was just the intensity of the play quality was just no one ever missed a tackle. There was no such thing like that. It was really intense. And it started probably in the late 60s and went maybe into the very early 80s, but it was really phenomenal. So that was the one good thing about the 70s. But everything else about the 70s basically stunk. And then we go into the 80s and suddenly you get Volcker, you get all this chaos. The train hits the brick wall. It's like total pandemonium. Like everybody's just like, right? Like that. Worse than now. It was really bad. And remember, we didn't have the internet.
What made it worse with Volcker? Because
people were just
how did it feel?
You're talking interest rates. Like suddenly you went out for a mortgage and a mortgage rates were like 22%. Now you're trying to buy a house with a 22% mortgage rate. Holy crap! Like it's like and a lot of people used to have these whatever they called them, where they would adjustable mortgages. That was like a big thing in the 70s, and suddenly people who bought a house in 1975 with like a 3% mortgage suddenly were paying 22% interest. They were totally. I don't want to use the word in national TV here.
The type of pain, one, it dried up the demand, I'm sure, for houses. Totally. 2, people who had adjustable mortgages, those arms, where their interest rates are going up now, they can't afford the house anymore.
They got blown out.
What did that do to the everyday economy?
How did they had to sell. Then also you had stuff where, for example, if you bought a house like in the beginning of the 70s by accident, because of all the inflation, that $60,000 house was now worth $400,000.
Oh, wow.
And you were just like, well, you might think you're rich, but where are you going to go? Because if you bought anything else, it was $400,000 now. So you were kind of in this weird, like, I made all this money, but like, what am I going to do with it? And so that was another issue. Then you had, you had chaos. You had whole industries, the steel industry, like massively consolidated because it was way overbuilt. Because steel companies were driven by the pensions. That's what put the whole steel business out of business. The reason why pensions work with the government is because they can keep hiring more and more people forever. It doesn't have to be economic. So what happens with a pension? In 1900, it took 5,000 people to make 1 ton of steel. In 1980, it took 50 people to make 1 ton of steel, but those 50 guys paid the pensions for 4,950 guys. So now in 1983, it took 25 people to make 1 ton of steel. And now now they're paying the pensions for 4,970. Like it just is. And it just buried the industry. It couldn't compete at all. And
how long did it take before that bull market came? How long
it was pretty early in the 80s, and everybody was worried there was going to be a crash. And I'm like, and I in those days, I remember my grandfather had lived through the Great Depression and like the 29 crash. And he used to say, and he was like a fantasizer he wasn't really a big investor, but that was like his dream to be like a big investor, but he never kind of got there. But he would be like, he's like, no, you can't fall off the floor. We're not up. You're not going to crash from the floor. You got to go up first. And we're not really anywhere. The market's been the same for 10 years. It hasn't really moved. So it's not going to go down. It really can only go up from here eventually. And it just, you waited, and all of a sudden, it was just like crazy went up. Like it was, and then there was all these, like you had the biotech revolution. You had all these crazy, like I remember Genentech went crazy. It went like huge. Then it blew up. Then like 3 years later, came back and they called it Genentech 2. It was like this Genentech bubble. It went back up again like crazy.
They were saying that Paul Volcker was right.
Oh, totally. He was a hero. He mellowed in old age and got wimpy, but in those days he was the king, man. He was He did what nobody else had the what's to do. And that's what Trump's doing right now. Trump is doing. Everybody knows he's got to do all this. Everybody knows it. You can scream all you want. The people who are screaming the most is because they were getting a lot of this. As some of my Italian friends will tell you, the envelopes used to be really thick. Now the envelopes are a lot thinner. So they're not getting, and there's a lot of monkey business going on. But it's not all monkey business. And what you got to realize is that some of this stuff is going to be flagged as bad. And then later on, it's going to be reinstated because people are going to go, oh, no, it wasn't bad. It's because of this, this, and this. Like, why do you have expensive? I remember one time before I knew you, I used to have a guy who was, for a short time, I don't remember what happened, why he wasn't a customer anymore. I think he bought a house or something. He was a retired Navy guy. He was a submarine guy. And he told me, I was talking to him one time about, there was this big thing in the 80s about how the Defense Department buys like $700 ashtrays for the Poseidon, whatever it is, the Trident submarines or whatever they were, the big thing at the time. And he explained to me, he said, you're 1,000 feet underwater. You need special things because if this thing splinters and that glass shoots all over the place, it's going to be a total catastrophe. So there's a lot more to it than just a heavy glass ashtray. There's a lot to it. And so maybe it wasn't worth $750. Maybe it was still going to be a $500 ashtray if you did it more efficiently. It was still going to be really expensive because its use was for a very unique, weird thing. And so there's probably going to be a lot of stuff like that. That's why there's going to be clawbacks and it's going to go back and forth for a while. But like I said, we're well past the point of no return. We need this. This thing has got to be, you got to torch this thing and then rebuild it. It's time. It needs it. It's going to be ugly. It's going to hurt, but the good thing for most of the public is that all the people who just go to work every day and don't work for the government, and you go to work every day and do your regular thing.
Don't work for the government,
right? As long as you don't work for the government, right? But
I don't know. Look at us veterans. What's going to happen to our pensions?
Oh no, you're going to be fine. They're not going to tell you. That's I hate to say it, the VA is one of the most corrupt, worst run agencies in the entire federal government. It has been for ages. Everybody knows that. You got to know that. Like they're just totally like terrible. They've gotten better than they were, which they were really bad. I mean, and just go to a VA hospital and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just totally a disaster. So that thing needs to be whipped in shape big time because you guys deserve. I mean, think about COVID. Don't you remember COVID? Yeah. What did they do? All those veterans nursing homes, they lumped all the people with COVID in there and killed half the people by putting people with COVID in with old senior who are the most vulnerable to die from get like the flu. Like what they killed them. That's what they did in New York. That's what they did in New Jersey. Sorry, it was what it was. It was basically murder. They should have known better. They did know better. They were busy playing politics instead of thinking.
Well, maybe I'm biased when I say this, but my biggest philosophy when it comes down to the economical construct is the most important piece that we have is the military.
Yeah, I totally agree.
If we don't have a military, we don't have an economy.
Right. I totally agree. You got to be strong.
There is no currency. We have no currency. We have no military.
You got to have a ability to project power in every inch of every space on the face of the earth. And you have to make people even if you ever read The Art of War, the best warrior is somebody who is so ferocious that they never have to fight because people are so scared they just run away when the guy comes. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. After the country was formed, after the Revolutionary War, there was a time period. I don't think it was called the Whiskey Rebellion, but there was a big rebellion in Pennsylvania because Alexander Hamilton put taxes on whiskey, and the farmers had a big protest. They tried to basically bolt from the United States at the time, the colonies. Washington reassembled the Continental Army, rode out to Pennsylvania. As soon as they saw him on the horse, they all fled. He didn't even have to lift one finger. They just saw him. They were so scared they ran. And that's power. And that's the way that's what you need to be able to do. You need to be so powerful, you never have to fight. And what that means is instead of spending money on like wasting all this money and all this crooked nonsense that goes on, that money has to be invested just like a business. What do we need? We need more submarines. We need more battleships, whatever. I don't know. Whatever we need, I don't know. But whatever we need, that's what we need. Do we need more troops? Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. Do we need a bigger Navy? We probably do. Do we need more stuff in space? I'm all about space. So, I'm ready, man. So I think this the long run, the slightly longer run effect of this is that money is going to be reallocated in be more just like a business. It's going to be spent more effectively. And now because you got dudes, you're going to always be checking on it. It's going to flag all the time when something stupid goes on, and all that. Garbage that you can't even believe this stuff. I'll give you a perfect example. I have a buddy who's an economist. He worked for the World Bank and in the 1980s, and he got hired to work on a project. And his project it took 2 years, and they paid him in the 1980s probably $250,000 a year to do this. And he was a mathematician, so that's why they hired him. He was hired to figure out if you took all the people on Earth, at the time it was like 6 billion or whatever, and put them together in a space, how much land would they take up? How big would the space be? And he calculated that you could put all 6 billion people in Texas, and they'd all have 1,600 square feet of room to walk around in. And he got paid $500,000 to do that. So, wow. That might be an important thing to do, but somehow I doubt that was worth $500,000. Mm-hmm. And there's dumber stuff that you can't even believe the dumb stuff they do. And yeah, I know you got to do basic research, and sometimes basic research is silly, but a lot of that can be done with the private sector. And a whole grant system and the whole peer review system with science now, you see.
And I saw that too. They was talking about like on a military basis, we got grocery stores. They were saying, hey, how about we just gave that to Walmart? Or what if we just, instead of having a VA, you just merge with regular hospitals?
Right. Or you have a VA, but you can restructure these things. Like exactly. Why isn't Walmart running the canteens in hospitals? I love Walmart. Why like, or in military bases? Like, why do they have their own, and especially nowadays with all this technology, it's not like you couldn't check the employees. Like maybe the employees have to have an extra background check because they're working on a military base. Okay. Even though they're not in the military, they just work for Walmart and they work in the food court or whatever they do there. Like, so there's still a way to check everybody and make sure it's nice and, it's like it's security is upheld. And I just think there's a million. Look at the post office. One of my jokes about the post office is, okay, if you want to save the electric car industry, the post office is dying on the vine, right? Because nobody mails anything anymore. I mean, what's mail? I don't even like. Somebody asked me to send him a check the other day, and I was like, a check? I was like, a check? you want a check? Who sends a check? I haven't sent a check since 1995. That's how last time I sent a check. So you want a check?
You got a comment there. You see that?
Right. So I said, no problem. I'll figure it out. We'll get a check for you. But it's
hold on. You got one more. Can you see it?
Oh, Uncle James is a legend. I love it. That's good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys are great. It's not me. It's you guys. Because you guys get me. I get all revved up when I got on here because you guys are so enthusiastic and you're paying attention. And even if you totally disagree with everything I say, you're still like plugged in. You're like, what is this guy talking about? Who is this crazy guy that he keeps bringing on? Why does this guy live on a boat? Who the hell lives on a boat? I met a girl the other day and she looked at me. She goes, you live on a sailboat? The look on her face was like the funniest thing. I was done. And not only that, I live on a sailboat with my cat. That's even more silly. And my cat is 23 years old, if you can believe it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's totally crazy.
They got a question for you here.
Go ahead.
This.
Oh, gold and real estate. All right. Well,
gold. What happened to our hedges? Gold was supposed to be a hedge of the market. Bonds was supposed to be a
Yeah,
hedge of the
yeah. Well,
market.
bonds are
Oh,
not like if rates
what
go
happened?
down, they might help you. But they were telling people to buy. This is another stupid thing on CNBC. They were telling people to buy bonds when interest rates were going up, and like that is the dumbest thing you could possibly. That is dumb. That is not
Now,
smart.
now
That is
explain how does interest rates have an impact on
all right.
bonds?
So if you have a bond and it's $1,000 and it pays 10%, so that means you get $100 a year, and interest rates go to 20%. The price of that bond is now going to reflect that $100 interest payment is now going to be 20%. It's going to, so in other words,
Now, what's
that
that price called? What's that price? Is something. It's
right.
the price of the bond is going to drop because that 10%
Yes,
is no longer
right.
attractive
Because
anymore.
now the market rate for interest rates is now 20%. So that in order to buy that bond and get 20%, if the coupon is only 10% to begin with, you're gonna have to buy that bond for like $800 instead of 1,000. So if you bought it at
Mm.
1,000, you're smarting until it comes due and pays, which maybe short or maybe not. And the big problem is for a lot of banks is they buy debt instruments and then they borrow on them. So now if I have a bond worth $1,000 and I borrow $500 against it, and now that bond is only worth $800, my creditors may say, you really need a little more collateral here because that's getting awfully close. We're a little uncomfortable with the coverage there. And so what does the bank have to do? It's got to either sell the bond, sell some
Mhm.
other bond, sell some real estate. That's where they target you and foreclose on your house, or call something, or right. That's what creates the problems. And now gold was kind of going up, but I think when you have these big, sometimes there's like sector moves where one sector outperforms. That's the normal market. You have good sectors. Sectors get hot. Sectors get cold, and there's like this rotation all the time. Sometimes you have things that are bigger than all of us, right? Big things like the US government doesn't want to pay 4.8% interest on $7 trillion. They want to pay 4% interest because on $7 trillion, that's going to make a big difference. And so they're trying to they're trying to get the Fed to cut rates. And I think there probably a lot of people are starting to say maybe the Fed should because the inflation numbers look pretty cool. You've got a lot of volatility because of this
I don't
tariff
see
talk
that.
with Trump.
I don't see that with Jerome Powell. Look at it. What he just said. The Fed chair. He seems to be a pretty
He's
standard
cagey.
guy.
He's
Yeah,
a
he's
cagey
like
guy.
he's
He's
more like,
very
let's see what's going to happen. He seems like he's going to
right.
stay put.
He's a lot, but I think he always comes off very indecisive. Yet I think he's very decisive under the cover. I think he plays politics really well. He tells everybody what they want to hear, sort of, just enough. I think I think he's a big thinker. I think he doesn't want to look like the president is forcing him to lower rates because that will make him look weak. So he has to be able to do this in a way to save face. And frankly, I think Trump is thinking the same thing. He's thinking, this guy needs to lower rates. But if he does it now, he's going to look like he's caving to me. And that's not going to be as impactful as if he does it because he needs to do it or he feels its time is right. Now, with the inflation numbers that just came out, all the layoffs going on, a slowing economy, I think you're going to see in the next couple of weeks, a lot of voices are going to start going, the Fed really needs to cut rates. And I would say it might be an effective counterbalance. That and tax cuts would be a really good effective counterbalance, maybe for all this tariff stuff. So,
Okay.
because Trump is floating out, they floated out this idea anybody who makes under 150,000 is going to pay no taxes anymore. That's what they're talking about. That's one of the things they're talking about.
He just made a good point. He said gold just hit a new record high.
Well,
year to date, gold futures are up 12.4%.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm afraid I do not follow gold that well, but the barbarous relic definitely tells you when the end of the world is coming. So it generally it went up like crazy in the 70s. I mean, it was, they detached the dollar from gold and all this other stuff, but gold was like the big winner in the 70s. It was like monster in the 70s. So,
In
it
March
could.
12, 2025, the highest price of gold history, 2000 was 3,000 now per ounce. So you're seeing the rise of gold. So gold is seem like it's been a good hedge.
It's
A good
well,
market.
it's supposed to be. The big thing that's disappointment is a lot of people thought Bitcoin was going to
Yeah.
work kind of like gold, and I have a tendency to think that it should, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. It seems to be crypto seems to operate under its own rules, which I think no one's quite figured out yet. Like the relationship to crypto and the stock market, the relationship to crypto and the economy, the relationship to crypto and the government. I don't think the relationship to crypto and the underlying technology under the tokens. I think no one is kind of figured that out yet. And I think that's one of the reasons I never tell people to buy that stuff, because I just can't figure it out.
So yeah, and it's not regulated. So
well, it's coming under. It's slowly getting under. You're going to see it, but I'd say less than 2 years, probably less than 6 months. It's going to be under the Buttonwood Agreement and under like regulation, under some kind of regulation. And then it will go mainstream, because then they can attract really big money into it. And some of the big money that's going in now is going in ahead of time, because they know there's going to be clear trading regulations for Bitcoin, which there needs to be, because it's kind of the problem with crypto is when you get involved, you think you're trading this stuff like you trade stocks, but none of those rules in the stock market apply to crypto. And you have no idea what's going on. You barely even get consistent prices from exchange to exchange. You don't know who all those traders were. It could be one person with 500 accounts trading the same token, and you think it's being traded a lot, but it isn't. It's actually one person doing all the trading, and you can't do that in the stock market. That's totally illegal. I mean, that's go to jail illegal. That's not just illegal; it's go to jail illegal.
So I'm looking at you're seeing the metals making a run. You got gold.
People always said precious metals are the things to buy in a recession or in a bad market. It's been brewing for a while. I frankly thought it would go up a little bit a couple of years ago. I thought it was going to make a much bigger move, and it kind of was. It's been stuck a long time. So you may be getting, because people are nervous. So it's flight to gold. So you're seeing that, which is exactly what Trump wants to create, because he wants the Fed has got to cut rates and do it in a face-saving manner, that it looks like they're doing it because they really need to do it. On the other hand, Trump wants to drive down. That's why he's talking all this crazy tariff stuff, because every time you say the word tariff, the stock market goes down.
Yeah.
And that's all you got to do is say, we're going to put a tariff on hockey pucks, and then the stock market would go down. No joke. I know that sounds stupid, but it's like, what I miss too from Canada is those maple leaf cookies that they sell that are made with maple sugar. Those things are awesome.
Now here's the thing, right?
Right. Go ahead.
You're watching the VIX.
Yes.
This is the volatility index up 42%. So far this year,
that's starting to look more like the 90s. That's starting to get up there. That's looking good.
It's like
that's a good time to write covered calls when there's a lot of volatility. You write covered calls against your stock, so even if they're down, you get income. You generate cash. Of course, you got to have enough stock to be able to do it. And you generate income, and then of course, either if the stock sells off more, you buy the call back. You ride it up, and once in a while you got to eat it, because you don't want to give up the stock, and you got to buy it. You just got to buy it up. You buy it up, and then you resell a higher call, so it mitigates your loss a little bit. So that volatility will give you much bigger premiums in the option market.
And this is my thing, right? Let's look at silver.
Ooh, silver.
17% so far this year. But here's the thing. When I look at silver, it looks cool right now, especially in a time when everything is pretty much getting slaughtered. The volatility index so far this year is up 42%, $24. It peaked out in March of 2020, for obvious reason that was COVID. But here we are again with the volatility index picking up. But here's the thing: when I look at things like gold, right, where were we at? That's silver. Let's look at gold. You look at gold over the last 5 years,
Right.
right? I'm going to put a comparison on it. Compare it to the SPY, right? You're looking at 5 years. You see the market come down, but since before the market came out, you've always seen gold over the time. I mean, the S&P 500 sit on top of it.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, you have these times where it will spike, and it hits its spike probably, every 5 to it spikes, then when the market turns
when
back
is that
around,
cross down there where gold is in the very beginning of the what is that 2020 at the very beginning?
Yeah, pandemic time. Yeah, 2020.
Huh.
The end, you're saying like in 2020 when you started to see when the market took its dip. Let's go back. Let's do it max.
Yeah, that's because that crossover is usually pretty significant. If gold suddenly outperforms the stock market, the cross is what you got to that usually signifies a big shift or something. Although the problem with commodities is, again, they're super fleeting. So they get really hot. When they get hot, they go up like crazy. And then when then the air comes out of the bubble real fast, and then they don't do anything for like 10 years.
Yeah, and the stocks will take off for the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's but in theory, it's easy to talk about. In reality, it's very hard to make those shifts. So,
and the thing too, looking at that is it's great for someone who's in the they're not in the accumulation, they're in the distribution phase of life where, hey, I'm older, I have this lump sum of money and I want to hedge, I don't want to be blah blah. Mm-hmm. But for someone who's looking at the next 5-6 years, if I'm going forward with myself or a client, I'm going to be more inclined to say, hey, well, I know there will be peaks when the markets will get shaky and go down and these things will shoot up. But like you said, gold right now in 2020 is shine. Right. Here it is.
There's some gold ETFs. I think GLD or something like that. I'd have to look it up again, but there's some ETFs. It's an easy way to play those things if you want to get in there. I think there's one for silver too. The issue with silver's a little weird because they do use silver for industrial processes. So silver has other uses besides just looking nice. Whereas gold is pretty much, jewelry and decoration and things like that.
Yeah. So when I look at these things, you're right. GLD is a good, way to have in there, and these things kind of peak and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I guess my issue right now is you could be right. We might be in for it. If we're in for another 3 or 4 months of this, you could make some money with those things, maybe. But on the other hand, the low hanging fruit may be off the tree already. Like my view right now is I missed the chance to short. So what I got to look for is how I'm going to make money when this thing bounces. So I'm already worried. I'm already thinking way ahead. Like where we got to be that when this thing turns around, what do I have to own that I'm going to make the most amount of money like as fast as possible, so I can buy a bigger boat. I mean, whatever, or just to make the money, like whatever we made. And then the problem also comes if you made good purchases and you own a stock for a while. Sometimes you get in this situation where like Palantir, that's got to be down 50-60%, but yet it's still 10 times what I bought it at. So it doesn't. It's like, what am I going to do? And if I sell it, what am I going to buy that's going to perform like that is when this thing turns around?
And I don't want to be chasing my tail. I don't want to be trying to jump out of equities.
Right.
Equities, jump into gold, then gold jumps up.
Yeah, I think a lot of, particularly, I think most investors overtrade. I mean, I've done it myself, believe me, plenty of times, but there's a tendency to jump from one thing to the next. And I think right now, if you miss the down, you probably want to start thinking in your head, when this thing turns around, what do I want to own? And that's what you probably want to start fishing for. If you're, you probably could make some miles in gold because it has a tendency to it went way, way up in the 70s. But I don't think this is going to last that long. This is not going to be a 10-year crisis. This is going to be, I would say if this goes 6 months, I'm going to be surprised. I don't think it's going to last that long.
Now, here's another thing. You guys says real estate in Texas and Florida is dropping, and in most states is stagnant. No one can afford a 7% rate.
Right. Well, I think no one can afford to buy a house. I think the other problem is the buying power. Yeah, because the average income is what? If for a family of 4, the per capita or the average is like what, 60-something thousand, but the average house price is like $400,000 now. So it's like the spread between I saw this thing in Japan, the average salary is like $25,000 a year, but the average house is like $72,000 a year. So, that's kind of close. But in the US, the average salary is like much higher. It's like 60 or 70 something. But the average house is like 200 or something. It's like a much higher. There's a big spread. The people just don't have, it's more than the interest rates. It's just the people don't have the buying power. And that's another thing that's going to be solved in the next 10 years because they're going to reconfigure the way they do zoning laws. You're going to have a lot more housing that's built almost like mass produced. Like there's companies like Boxable. There's a bunch of companies out there that make like tiny homes or smaller homes. They basically build them in a factory. They roll them out. They put them on a foundation and boom, you plug them in and boom, you have a house. And those are going to be, $50,000 a piece instead of 500, 500,000 or like where I live around here, everything's like $1 million. There's like nothing, a 4-room house is 750,000. It's like crazy.
Full-time workers. All right, so let's pull this up. We're going to pull up the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics to look at income.
Okay.
Let's see. We're going to see if I can blow this up.
The BLS.
Yep, Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So everybody can see this. Let me get this together. So according to Bureau of Labor Statistics, this came out January 2022. That was the last one we got.
Okay.
And everybody, so I forgot to tell everybody, hit the like and subscribe and all that good stuff buttons. But anyway, here are the highlights. Median weekly income of full-time workers was $1,192 in the fourth quarter of 2024. Women median income earnings was $1,000. 83% of the 1,300 was for men. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month.
What, right? 55, 60,000 a year?
And that's not even including taxes.
Right. And with that, you got to buy a $400,000 house. It doesn't, yes. It's more than just interest rates. It's just the buying. People's purchasing power got creamed. Like I said, that dollar in 2020 is now 76 cents. So people got
so
hammered.
Let's say they're saying the average man was I want to say 1,100. Average one was $1,000. Let's say if you add that together for a household, that means a household is bringing $96,000 in, and you equate for taxes. That household is probably seeing about $5,000 to $6,000 a month in total after tax. So right now, a $400,000 house at 6 or 7%, that is going to cost you about $4,000 in mortgage.
Right, and you got to and what's the 20 like to put the money? 20% down payment is $80,000,
and then you need utilities.
Right, everything else.
And
you have to have a car too. Like most people have to have a car.
A lot of my buddies, I was just talking to one of my buddies the other day. He was telling me, "Hey, I made all this money in real estate," and I was like, "Dude, over the last 5 years, of course, I made a crap ton of equity, and I've also have land that's gone up in value, inherited houses, stuff like that, or whatever, right? Got a house here in Colorado, a house down in Georgia, right? Great equity, woo, good for me. But my brain is concerned that this home that I'm in right now, I paid $400,000 for it 5 years ago, right? That's what interest rates were low, and I got a 2 and all the good stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, they're like, oh, your house is like 600,000. Great. Of course, those 5 years I paid down on, on the mortgage, and it's going up. But my brain is thinking, okay, now they're saying your house is worth 600,000. The interest rate is at 5, 6, 7%. That means somebody, if they came and bought my house today, their mortgage is going to be like $4,000 or something. And that's in 2025. If we keep on this projection, my house is set to be worth probably about $1 million in 10 years.
Yeah.
Or 5 years, I don't think we're going to get that pandemic push. But I'm wondering, what would people be doing, or what would kids be doing to afford? The average house right now is 400,000.
Well, this is the purchasing power has declined so dramatically, and that's what a lot of people are feeling. I think what's going to happen is a couple of things. There's going to be a lot more options in housing like this. That's why this big push with tiny houses and stuff like that. There's going to be that thing's going to become a real thing. It's all of a sudden going to become a big thing, and there's other stuff besides that.
I got to say this. Shout out to Freddie B. He says, my man Prince Dax, I need more videos. I miss your videos. Finger red one. Okay, you're right. You're right. I told Uncle James saw me. It struggled for me to get on tonight. It was a lot. You saw that behind the scenes. But Freddie B, always good to see you here. I know definitely. I told Uncle James that I say, hey, I know I've been out of action. Haven't done a live in a while. Here we are, almost 2 hours into a live. And we still have people in. But let's get to the next question somebody made. Mm-hmm. So, Hello Damie says, they're saying the government is trying hard to stop all the inventory of homes coming out that are foreclosed. So they're saying houses are being foreclosed on, but the government don't want people to say that. And they're saying it's a fake market. They feel like it's a fake market. People can't afford these houses.
Right.
So, my buddy's like, oh, I'm buying houses, I'm renting them. I'm like, that's great, but who's going to be able to afford this rent? Wages are not keeping up. You just saw from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is not me. The average man, I know on Instagram, it seems like everybody's flying around in private jets and, eating caviar and steak.
Right. Well, that's not the real world. That's Instagram. Because on Instagram, I fly around a private jet and I eat caviar, but right now I just ordered in pizza. So that was that's it. That's the real world. Right. But I used to have this joke. The joke is porn stars have to do laundry too. So if you're like a pretty girl, she's not going to go on Instagram showing her doing laundry. She's going to go on Instagram and show her she's going to go to a party and look all dressed up all nice and go out in some fancy thing. So with social media, you don't see any of the real life stuff. Nobody washes dishes on social media. Nobody does any of those things. So it gives us all this very distorted, and it's funny because when you listen to the media and the news, they talk like everybody is totally impoverished. We need the government to do everything for us. Nobody has any money. We're all starving and we're out whatever. It's like one extreme to the other, and I would say both are as equally unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not real representations of what's going on. But I do think there's a big problem with buying power. There's a big problem. There's a big skills gap, like the jobs that you can make the money. There's not enough people who have those qualifications. However, I think that's changing because public education is done. It's toast. It's over. So it's totally over.
That's not true, James, until you buy the Wesley Learns.
Well, you see, the thing is, I'm not saying education is over.
Yeah.
I'm saying that in its present form, it's going to take new forms. Because think about this. If you go to 1900 and you look at a schoolroom, a classroom, it pretty much looks the same as it does now. But if you looked at an airplane in 1900, if there was an airplane, I think 1912 was the first one.
Yeah.
If you look at that plane and compare it to a space capsule that went to the moon or something like that, there's quite a difference in the last 100 years. If you look at anything else over 100 years, cars, airplanes, anything you can think of, they have changed dramatically. Yet when you go to a classroom, it's the same thing. And I'm not trying to blame anybody or say teachers are no good or whatever. No. That's not what I'm talking about. The format is stuck in the 1800s. And nowadays, because of all this technology and all these outlets, like this show, right? This show is people are watching it because they're trying to learn stuff. Because of all this technology, we can provide a much more customized product from an education standpoint to students with really not that much more effort. We're just not doing it because we're wedded to this. You got to get a teacher and the parents want to see the prom and they like the high school football games and all. We're wedded to all the fun stuff about high school and school that we remember when we went to school. But the kids, like, what did COVID show? Like the schools all say, oh, there's a learning gap because they weren't in school. No, what it showed is they weren't learning anything at all, and they all got found out. I have friends I have a friend, he's got 3 kids, and he's a real nice guy, but he used to always say, until COVID, I always thought my kids were a little slow. Maybe they were kind of dumb. You can't have everything, right? They're nice kids. They work hard. They're just not that smart. That's what he always thought. Then when they were home for COVID, he realized they're not learning anything in school at all. That's why they're dumb, because they don't learn anything. And he's furious. And so all of a sudden he got really interested in what was going on in school. And now he yanked them out and they're all in private schools now because he got really ticked. And I think there's become a lot more alternatives that are becoming more mainstream. In the old days,
what was Uncle James? Check that comment out you got here. Mac B, what's going on?
No.
Prince and Uncle James, this is about to be good. How you gentlemen doing? We've been over about 2 hours.
You getting tired now? You getting worn out? I was up at 4:30 this morning, by the way.
No, I'm definitely not tired because like I tell people all the time, I love what I do. So I eat, sleep, I write coloring books about it.
Yep.
I write children's books about it.
Well, you're the perfect example of how education should change. Because you with your books, you're pointing out on what kids go to school and they do all this stuff and they don't even know how to, like, the basic things about investing or buying stocks or insurance or how to have a budget or any of this stuff, or for that matter, how to add a tip on a bill. It's just like, but because of you're tapping into that need, and they're popular. Yeah. They're popular because you're hawking your stuff tonight, man. You just buy this book. Make me a millionaire. I want a mansion and a yacht.
And we just crossed over 9,000 copies sold.
Right. Well, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
So, and the thing about it, James, is that I've talked to all these schools, all these big wigs, all these people, big whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, they go through all this stuff and they try to block it out and go this route or whatever. So I love, the fact that, hey, being independent, writing and producing it and putting your own stuff out there,
I think it's fantastic. It is the future of education. It is part of that future. And the problem is a lot of teachers, if you say anything, they always feel like you're attacking them. And it's not, it's a combination of a lot of things that's wrong with education. Primarily the Department of Education in Washington is that's the first big problem. And then it trickles down from there. But I do think we're going to go into an era where there's going to be a lot more options, much more customized, tailored, because you know how it is. You have a kid, I don't know anything about Wesley personally, but I know, for example, I have a business partner. If you show her how to do something and just do it, and she watches you, 2 minutes later, she can do it exactly the way you do it. Like she like that. But if you gave a book to her and said, read this book, how to turn on this computer and how to do it, she'd never figure it out. And
I want to, before we get off this topic, I want to give my thought process to Halo Damon. And that's my premises and my own personal aspect. I think consumer confidence, consumer sentiment right now, everybody's kind of staying put, holding what they got, eating a pizza, staying at home, baking chicken, cooking at home, because everybody's kind of waiting for this thing to play out. I don't think people, even, you got to think about it, you just laid off all these federal employees. The other federal employees about to face a reduction in force. So nobody's like, let me go buy that new house or let me go buy that new car. Yeah, you know what? You're gonna need to hold on to this truck a little bit longer. Yep. Right? It's Wesley's birthday this weekend. He's turning 14.
Wow.
You know what? maybe we may not need to go to Vegas for your birthday. Maybe we just need to.
You're taking a 14-year-old to Vegas? Man, I missed that when I was a kid. We got a Happy Meal at McDonald's and we were all excited, man. We were all like, wow.
That would be too.
We got a large fry with the thing instead of I was like, wow.
So I'm looking at like, hey, maybe we'll stay home. So you're thinking more people become more conservative. They're watching their 401ks go down. Yep. They're watching interest rates kind of.
It's definitely impacting. And especially with the negativity from the media. Like the media, you notice we had almost no the inflation numbers came low. You barely heard anything about it. Everybody's screaming about the price of eggs. You didn't hear anything that the new Secretary of Agriculture, they just did all kinds of stuff to get egg prices down, and egg prices have started to move down. It's actually working right away. They're like, you don't hear anything from the media about it. All they do is poo-poo Dooge and say, oh, well, they claimed all this, but then it went away and blah, blah, blah. No, you should go on the site. If you look at the site, it's scary. It's so bad. You can't even believe the stuff that's in there. Paying for hookers, he finds out everything. So you better watch out, my friend. If your Navy credit card comes up there, they're going to be like, "Oh, who's this guy? What is he doing?" Like,
I'm like, I'm already retired.
Right, you're out of there. You got out just in the nick of time. So, yeah. Well, I feel bad for anybody getting late. It's terrible, but it's an activity. It's long overdue. And like I said, this is the Great Reset. This is really it. It's going to change. Everything is going to be totally different. And I think also that's why a lot of people are pausing, because they have the money. But like you said, I don't know if I want to buy this house because I'm not really sure what's going to happen next year. And I don't want to do this. And this is probably going to go on for a little while. And then the novelty of all this on, off, and tariff, no tariff, do this, do that, whatever, is going to kind of wear out after a while. People are going to be like, okay, that was scary for a while, but you know what? We're all still alive, and the New Jersey Transit still runs, and there's still traffic in the Lincoln Tunnel. So I gotta move forward now. It's like people are only going to sit still for so long. And I don't think that downsizing the government is going to. The tariff thing is a little different. It could spiral really easily out of control, and so you got to be careful. And particularly this thing with I'm most concerned with Europe. Actually, I think everybody else is going to come like the Arab states. Most of the Middle East countries love Trump. And Israel loves Trump. So he has the Arabs and the Israelis like him. He's like they all like him except for maybe Iran, but everybody else likes him. And and he's quite popular in a lot of other places. He's actually quite popular in places like France and Italy. You wouldn't know it, but in France he's actually quite popular. And then I just think I think we just got to get through this and not let the media put stupid stuff in our head. They're not cutting Social Security. They're not going to cut veterans benefits. They may shrink the size of the VA because the VA is proved over.
I don't think that people think that he'll do it. I think that people are like, hey, Trump is so sporadic. You just never know.
Well, that's what the media is trying to project. And that's why I tell everybody, read that book, Art of the Deal. What he's doing is he's ratcheting up, like what we call. He's not going, oh, I'll give you $10 for it. You say, no, give me $100. And then we meet at 50. Trump is like, he's like, no, I'll give you $1. And then you say, well, what about 50? You say, oh, well, I don't really want it anyway. And he runs away. And then you go, well, what happened? I thought you wanted to buy it. And then I come back and I go, I'll give you 50 cents for it. He's like full court press, full court press and then back off, full court press and then back off. And he's looking for them to like angles on stuff. He's also seeing where it squeaks, where it squawks. And then, he's one person in this huge country with this super complicated economy. No matter how smart you are, and no matter how smart all his advisors are, they're not going to think of everything. So something's going to happen, or he goes to do something that he thinks is probably going to have very little negative impact. And somebody's going to call the White House and go, go, Mr. President, if you do that, we're gonna have to close down our whole factory because of this. Be, we don't want to do that. Boom, like so. And the other thing you haven't noticed is what's going on is a lot of foreign companies and big U.S. companies are building factories in the United States again. There's all kinds of Samsung is building stuff. Taiwan Semiconductor is building stuff. Intel is building stuff. There's all kinds of stuff going on here like crazy. And eventually those are jobs. That's going to create tons of jobs. And I would say, I think there's a lot of, I think there may be misplaced people, but there's certainly plenty of smart people in Washington. They're going to figure out tons of stuff to do.
Not what now, James. I gotta ask this question, Uncle James.
Go ahead.
He was saying, you know what, Uncle James, he just loves Trump. He don't care.
That's true. Yeah, I like the guy, but I don't want to see him crash the stock market. I'm a guy who lives. I'm like you're talking to a guy who's 99% invested, 98% of his entire life. So I'm one of those guys where some people say they're house poor, like they bought a house and after they pay, they have no money left. I was one of those guys who bought stocks and didn't even have $2 to spend on lunch because I had every single penny I had in the stock market. And so I've done that for a long, long time. So for me to think that a guy that I promote and think he's right is kind of hitting something really hard that's really close to my heart. Like personally, I take a really big hit when the stock market goes down because that's where all my money is.
And let me ask you a question. Who does the stock market impact the most? Upper, middle, or lower class?
Oh, well, I would say the reality is always the people with less money and nowadays, because so many people have 401ks and all the access to that, it's not like in the 80s, still most of the investors were upper middle class or more. It was a whole different world. And then the 90s, you had day traders. So now you start to get sort of very middle class people could trade stocks. And then with all that, they had 401k plans and IRAs and all that stuff. It introduced a lot of people to the stock market who up till then probably thought it was kind of out of reach and not something you did. So now the people who are going to squawk the most are the people who have $25,000 in a 401k plan and it went down to 18,000 and they're going to be screaming. The guys like me who are sitting there going, I've been through this a couple of times and hopefully it's going to get better. And if not, I'll just sail away into the sunset. That's it. See ya. See ya. The rent's paid all the way till next year. I'm safe. I won't be homeless until next year.
Uncle James, I got a question for you. What do you say? What do you think of this idea of trying to eliminate income tax?
I'm all for it. Alexander Hamilton was said that the problem with income tax and corporate tax is everybody cheats like crazy and it takes forever to collect the money. And he is right and I don't even mean with the cheating, even if you do really simple taxes in the US, like that 1040 easy form, how long does that take? 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours to do it? It's like nuts. And that's for somebody who makes $20,000 a year. It takes them 3 hours to fill out one tax form. No.
So we have no income tax. How does the government make money?
Well, you'd either have some kind of flat tax they just deduct from income and all transactions. So you buy a house and sell a house, everything's like a Schedule C. You just say, I bought the house for $200,000. I sold it for $400,000. I made $200,000. I paid 15%. Boom. I bought a stock for 10. I sold for 20. I made $10. I pay 15% tax. That's it. It's just flat tax across the board. Everybody pays. No ifs, ands, or buts. No deductions. No nothing. And that's it.
Oh, so you're saying whatever you made, no deductions. So if it's hey, your company made $100,000, wouldn't it hurt a business if they don't get to write off their deductions?
Well, that gets complicated. But if the taxes are low enough, it doesn't make any difference. People do all this stuff.
Why do people not I like Herman Cain when he said 999 plan. I don't know if you remember Herman Cain, but he said 9% income, 9% corporate, 9% flat tax. He was a presidential candidate not too long ago, but then he died during the pandemic. But he was just hey, flat tax across the board. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people in Trump's White House who think of flat taxes. Trump talked about it a long time ago. I haven't heard him say anything about it in a while. they're trying to get a big tax cut because the tax cut will balance they feel it will balance the tariffs. So if prices go up, but people get a big tax cut, especially the little guys, all those guys making under $250,000 a year, myself included right now, all those people, they need to, if they get a tax cut, they'll embrace that. They're just going to spend all the money anyway. And they're going to, that would really go a long way to settle things. And it's coming anyway. They're going to have it in. This budget is going to have some big surprises for people. Apparently, the budget of Washington, D.C., the district, is cut by $1 billion, and nobody seems to know that. It was snuck in there. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff. It's going to be a good start, but Congress has to really get going. They gotta, I mean, I know it's only been a month, but they gotta jump on this bandwagon really quick. And you're going to have more stuff going on because the post office signed up, said whatever Duge says we're going to do, period. Where the guy who's the head of the post office said he signed a letter and sent it to Congress. He said whatever Duge says we're going to do. They're going to help us. They're going to help us save the post office because without it, the post office can't function. It's going to go out of business.
Wow.
So and that the EPA is doing it. That Zeppelin guy, whatever he's like, he said they gave away like $6 billion to nothing. Like I can't even figure out what they spent the money on, and he wants it back. He's like they're trying to claw back money that was given away that they can't figure out what anybody's even using it for. So so that's the EPA. So that's a big positive. There's a lot of positive stuff. It's only been a month, and the media is having a frenzy on any negative little thing, but they're not telling you anything that's positive. And they're because you no longer pay a guy who's 300 years old his Social Security, we're cutting Social Security. No, we're not. Just like the Medicaid thing. All they did was put Medicaid back to where it was pre-COVID. So in other words, you had to be over a certain age and do this. They expanded it during COVID. To give people more coverage. Because COVID's over. And all that COVID money that was thrown around, I think probably more than half of it is all fraud.
Of course.
Oh God, there's
so easy.
And a lot of it's for people. People got it out of the country. There's people all over the world. We just had there was a big arrest in New Jersey, or there's a big case. There's 27 guys. There's a few of them in the United States, but the rest of them are all over the world. And they got like millions and millions of dollars of those PPI loans, and they don't even have businesses or anything. It was totally a scam.
Yeah. Well, Uncle James, I know everybody that's tuned in. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I know people sending me text messages. Glad to see me back live. I'm glad to be back live, but it's been over 2 hours.
Yeah, it's long. I'm tired. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, I know.
My cat is staring at me like, "Are you gonna? Aren't we supposed to be watching? Because we watch TV at night together." And he's giving me the look like, "What are you doing?"
And the thing about it, I like, just coming on, talking to the people. A lot of people are worried at this time. They're seeing the market decline. Breaking news every 2 hours.
Yep.
Income tax. This happening. People are nervous. All the drama that's going on. So I wanted to kind of so I want to come back and get back at it. So.
Cool. I just want to give one little bit of advice. Take a deep breath and focus on your own life. Forget about all this other crap. And just focus on what you got to do every day to improve your life, your kids' lives, or whatever you're doing. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on yourself. And this whole thing will settle out, and then you can make bigger decisions or whatever. It's all gonna work out really positive. I am utterly most convinced. And you're talking to a guy who, like I said, when the stock market goes down, my net worth, like it's squeezed. I can feel it. It's like, I mean, I can feel it right away. Because I'm not like Prince. I don't own houses all over the country and all this stuff.
No, I just moved all over the country and stuff like that.
No, I know. I'm just busting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway.
But yeah, doing all those type of things, and I'm just glad that people can hear this and to have a dialogue, because many times I had, you and I will talk on the phone. I talk with different mentors to, y'all been around. Y'all seen the seven, I was born in 84, right? So, I mean, I didn't get a cognizance of kind of what was going on to like late 90s. I didn't really get into it till like 2008, 2007. By that time, you've already seen .com bomb, the 90s, the 70s, the 80s. So the wisdom that you bring along and the sentiment, you're like, dude, I've seen this. We've seen it together. Pandemic, we've seen the pandemic, we've seen 2022, and we see some bulls. And you always say, hey, it's not a bull market. The 80s was a bull market. You get 20% on the market in 1 year, whoop-de-doo, So I haven't experienced it. I haven't seen a market, a 20% year in the S&P 500. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's good. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying that's nothing. Like you'll see. It's coming like a tidal. I'm telling you, it's coming like a tidal wave. It's gonna be huge. We're gonna make a major. Everything is gonna be totally different. It's gonna be a huge change, and and a positive one. I think it's gonna be really good for everybody. And
okay, we're back now. We're going to do more of these. We're going to be more abreast.
Perfect. You need to do it. You got to do it. It's how you got started. It's who your people, your fan base, and it. Plus, you're not dependent on anybody else. You do this yourself, and it's independent. It keeps you out there as an independent voice, because the winds of the world change often, and you can be everybody's buddy one day, and the next minute you are canceled or whatever. Who knows what? You just and it could be something you said 20 years ago. When you said it 20 years ago, it was okay, but now suddenly it's not okay.
It ain't good. It ain't fun. Yeah.
Yep.
So speaking of the people that are local, I'm scheduled to be on 9 News later. Cool. I think next week, and then Fox 31 here. That's local. This local TV. Fox 31 here in Denver on the 2nd, and we're partnering with the city to give out. We're going to do a children's financial literacy expo on April 2nd.
That is the future.
We got 2. We partnered with 2 city councilmen, and that's what people always ask me. Hey, Prince, and then I got Georgia. Then I'm going straight to Georgia to give out. We're doing a financial literacy tour there for 3 schools down in Georgia.
Awesome.
And up here in Denver, and in San Antonio as well. So in September. But my schedule. But to make those things happen, it's a lot of coordination and deals and this and that and moving parts and who's going to do this, who can't do that. So that's been eating up a lot of time. Then, as you already know, having your own firm, starting your RIA, and building that out, to managing, millions of dollars, moving around, markets moving every single day, client calls, compliance.
Oh god, yeah, compliance. And plus, people freak out when it gets. Yeah, I know it. People get totally freaked out. I feel it. I can tell people are freaked out. I can feel it. I just
you see all those things that eats up. Then plus your dad, your husband, that eats up a lot of your time. I'm writing for Investopedia. Finishing up the book, launching the books. Golf tournaments, sitting on different boards. It eats up a lot of your time, but I'm definitely going to, since retiring from the military, I was like, oh, I'm going to stream all day. And I was like, yeah, not so much.
You got it. It's funny how sometimes what you think is a small thing will eat up tons and tons of time. That's one of the reasons I don't get involved in too much of other certain. I try to stay focused, and I still do too many things. And it just because a little thing can just become, and it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that it ends up eating up a lot of time, and you get to a limit. You just don't have it. I had to say no on a bunch of stuff the last 2 weeks, because I'm like, there's just no way I'm ever going to be able to do that.
It's like one of my buddies told me, I don't, he realized I don't even like leaving the house because it eats up a lot of my time. Like a meeting, 11 o'clock meeting, right? Yes. It's like when we meet in New York, right? I'm like, hey, James, I'm in New York. Meet me at the New York Stock Exchange, right?
Right.
That 1 hour or 30 minutes we're together, that takes. If I got to meet this person at 4, I got to take a shower at 3, be out the door, be out the door by 4.
That's
with this
one of the
person.
reasons I usually cook. I grabbed pizza today because I watched too many of those bar pizza guy doing pizza reviews, and I said I got to go get a pizza. I can't take it, so I got it today. But I normally cook because if I have to leave to do anything when I'm working, it just wastes too much time.
Yeah, and
Even
when I
to
work
pick
from home,
stuff up, even to go somewhere, pick up food and bring it back, as well as it's crazy expensive.
people
And
call me and say, "Hey, Prince, let's meet here," and I say, "Hey, let's Zoom."
yeah,
You know,
yep.
and I don't go out to meet unless I have to know what I'm doing, and I try to match things together, and
Yep.
you know,
Yep. And
so
it's another reason I get up really early in the morning because nobody's around. And I have one business partner who calls me up at like 4:00 in the morning and we talk, and that's the day. We're done. He's
yeah.
4:30 in the morning. We're already talked for a half hour, and he's already made me, my heads are spinning already. I'm like, ugh.
Like I have to go to the post office in the morning, to
Yep.
mail off these
Yep.
items, but
Well, you better
that
go
should
because Dude is taking a look at it tomorrow, so you better get over there.
no. We say, dude,
Right.
no.
They're. I'm telling you that he put in a letter today. The Postmaster General said that whatever Dude says they're going to do, they're going to work with Dude. They want to clean this up because they don't want the post office to. Otherwise, the post office is going to have to be shut down because it's a disaster. There's no mail anymore. You're the only guy who mails. Nobody else mails.
But I have to mail. I have to mail off my finger.
Well, no, I know. I get mail too. I get some mail, but
Yeah.
there's no mail anymore.
You're right.
Mail. People say
like,
mail, and I'm like, mail.
Mhm.
Like, what's mail? Oh, you don't need back. Like it's like weird. You're like, that's it.
Okay.
Anyway, we really should get off because it's too late. I think.
Yeah, it's too late, and I see it's 10 people on here now. But thank y'all for tuning in from all across the world, all across the globe, the nation. Glad to see y'all back on. We're going to keep abreast of this market, these turbulent times, and to see what's going on. Because things, I'm pretty sure we got more to go. Department of Education is on the block. The post office on the blocks. Your portfolios is all over the place. Your 401k is all over the place.
Yep.
Elon and Doge is all over the place, or Dude is on the James.
Right, huge.
But but we're gonna keep. Gold is hitting an all-time high.
Gold is flying. That's I learned. I learned something from your listeners tonight. That was I hadn't even looked at in a while, and I'm just because I've just been like I should have went short and I missed it, and I'm just like, okay, let's see this. Let's look for the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I've been doing. Like what is going to make this thing end, and what do we got to do?
I only cover called. I couldn't stomach short. I cover called some stuff. And
cover calls as the stocks drop and then you buy them back at a lower price is a great way. It's like a covered short. It's not dangerous. You can even do it in your IRA. And it's like and also you stay in the stock if it's a stock you love and you're worried that if you get out of it, you're never going to get back into it again. I used to use them like crazy. Mind you, we were on like 90% margin in those days, and we were like margin to the eyeballs. And like we needed the cash to make sure the thing didn't get a margin call. So we needed
exactly.
We were stretched out. We were flying. So we were and getting yelled at by compliance every 5 minutes. They were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I don't know what's going. What are you talking about?
Okay.
All right.
Well, Uncle James, anything you want to leave anybody with?
No, I'm still doing tours in New York. And like, if you're in the city, I have a Facebook page called Unofficial Wallstreet. Please say hello. I'm more than glad. And I want to just say to Prince and all the viewers that if you just give me a heads up, I'm glad to come on anytime if you want to, because the market's crazy. If you want me to come on a couple of times in the next couple of weeks or a couple of months, I'd be glad to do it. It's super fun. And like I said, I'm going to go look at gold again because as soon as we get off here, I'm going to bring up all my charts and go like,
But that's good. That's good. And also, this is, I don't even know how long ago was that now. Wesley was maybe 5 at the time. It's talking about a decade ago that I took a tour. I took your tour. So if you're in New York City, you want to see the iconic things in New York. That was my first. I took the financial crisis tour.
Yes.
Uncle James.
And you'll have a lot of fun because I'm even crazier in person than I seem on the video here. I'm even more nutty. So because I worked down there too long, it made me mental. And maybe I have like PSTD from working on a trading floor too long.
Yep, but I like to hear that, and I saw that, and coming back, and now now I come back so much now. Well, it's not a whole lot, but maybe once a year I sporadically find myself in New York for some reason.
Oh yeah,
once or
you
twice
got to
a
you
year.
got to come. We'll have a I'll take you out to breakfast. I want you to meet somebody. We'll take you out to breakfast.
Oh, how's the book coming along?
Oh, it's I got a lot to tell you, but I can't tell you here, and a lot of crazy stuff's going on. So we're getting there. We are within. Yes. Yeah, the King of Con. If you want to read a cool book, it's about a guy who was in the mafia, a real mafia guy, went to jail for 15 years, and he was like an investment banker for organized crime. And he tells his story, and I am working on a deal where we're making it into a movie, and then we're doing some other stuff as well. And he's quite a character, and he's a criminal. He was a criminal. Most of his stuff was all finance that, frankly, if it wasn't for it was the people that he was doing business with that got him in trouble. It wasn't what he was doing in business. It was the stuff he was doing was legit. It was all like all kinds of investment banking stuff, but with mafia companies, like putting garbage companies together to create big, like BFI and all this kind of stuff that we have now, like that kind of stuff, consolidation of industries. He was part of created Coach Industries, which is a big bus company, stuff like that. He worked on a lot of that kind of stuff. And because those were all kind of organized crime type of companies. And it's really cool because he's alive. He's like left over from the old days, from the 80s or like 70s. He's like one of the last ones left over from that era. And he knew everybody. He got hired by Jimmy Hoffa and all this stuff. It's kind of cool. And so it's kind of an interesting experience because he's quite a character and he's super, super smart. But he talks like a gangster, so it's kind of weird. So he kind of throws you the way he talks, but he's very smart. So that's what I'm working on. But come take a tour, and you'll have a good time, I promise.
Cool. Well, everybody out there, good night. We'll see you wherever you are in the world. It's good to be back. Trump is making finance and then markets interested again. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we're going to follow this saga as it continues. Y'all check out Uncle James, King of Con. And if you're in New York, or if you want to go to New York, or if you're interested in taking a tour, I highly recommend something about saying hello, Uncle James, and checking out his tours, all the good stuff too while you're there. So, all right, to the next video, podcast, cartoon, or whatever else crazy you see me do around the globe. Y'all already know my name. I'm Prince Dykes. That's Uncle James. Peace, be safe, I'm out, and thank you.